My log has a message for you.
Do you think that if you were falling in space, that you would slow down after a while or go faster and faster? Faster and faster. For a long time you wouldn't feel anything. Then you burst into fire. Forever. And the angels wouldn't help you. Because they've all gone away.
David Lynch's TV thriller Twin Peaks had always maintained a small but loyal following until it was canceled in its second season. Lynch, however, was far from done with the town of Twin Peaks.
If you like the series, you'll love the movie.
More happens in those 7 days than happened during the whole series on television.
We really run the gamut in this of what she goes through.
The night my girl went away, gone off in a world filled with...
The show's prequel followed ill-fated prom queen Laura Palmer's 7-day descent into madness. However, Fire Walk with Me would soon become one of the most hated films of all time. The owls are not what they seem, and neither was Twin Peaks' Fire Walk with Me. Was this judgment an unfair analysis of the film? My log thinks so. Despite the dismissal of Fire Walk with Me as an abomination and crime against art, it does a lot of things very well, and it does them very similarly to another film that critics now agree was ahead of its time. Alfred Hitchcock's Vertigo followed the same pattern of a descent into insanity. Vertigo and Fire Walk with Me explored the same themes of obsession, facade, and nightmares as a door to the subconscious. Both films progress as the protagonist comes closer to discovering a truth that will inevitably be their undoing. There's a detective and a mysterious blonde femme fatale who secretly leads a double life, the clue to which is a necklace. Beyond that, there's striking visual similarities between Hitchcock's Red Opera House room and Lynch's Red Room, the set of many Twin Peaks nightmares. There's even this moment.
Well, now, I'm not going to talk about Judy. In fact, we're not going to talk about Judy at all. We're going to keep her out of it.
Actually, we are going to talk about Judy. And Madeline. Women as different as red and green. Judy strays drastically from the undeniable pattern in Hitchcock's choice of leading ladies.
Lush, languorous, dreamy, and bewitching.
He knew exactly what he wanted.
Judy, played by Kim Novak, was a brunette, crude shopgirl, and the opposite of Hitchcock's ideal woman. However, she bears a striking and not exactly coincidental resemblance to the cold, mysterious blonde Madeline, and her love for Scotty, played by Jimmy Stewart, makes her vulnerable. Judy, like Laura Palmer, becomes the object of an obsession that eventually leads to her murder. What's well done about Vertigo is we're unaware of a logical conclusion until the very end because Hitchcock alludes that something paranormal may actually be occurring. We are shown what Jimmy Stewart's character Scotty sees, and thus we are unsure of how much of it is in his head. Scotty's fantasies are portrayed as realities, and his reactions to them seem reasonable. For example, this sequence, where the background of his kiss with Judy is flooded with his memories of Madeline. In this scene, where a girl on the street looks just like Madeline, it seems perfectly reasonable for him to follow her up to her apartment and demand answers. We are shown his nightmares, and thus they become our nightmares. And with a classic Hitchcock dolly and zoom, Scotty's fear of heights becomes our fear of heights.
Is there one rule above all others which is indispensable to a director who wants to frighten an audience?
I think he should understand the psychology of audiences. he should also know that audiences love to enjoy the very thing that they have built in, and that's fear.
There's also little choices that put you inside Scotty's head, like how we only see him driving down hills, subconsciously emphasizing the idea of falling. Or the abundance of shots where Judy is reflected in a mirror, visually hinting that there are perhaps two of her. While we know Scotty's reality is a subjective one, there's a certain ambiguity about the supernatural, not just in Vertigo's plot, but also in its visuals. Like a face cast half in shadow, it leaves details in the dark up to the imagination. Vertigo is autobiographical in a sense. Hitchcock uses Jimmy Stewart as a proxy for his own maddening obsession with Madeline.
He was obsessed with it, I would say. Obsessed with the look. It was as if he was Jimmy Stewart, making sure that she was dressed exactly the way Madeline was.
I don't know if any of you women have had the horrible experience of being the object of someone's obsession. If you have, you would know exactly what that is like, and it is oppressive and frightening. And you find out that you've been followed, and you find out that your handwriting has been analyzed, and you find out that you're being spied upon.
While Vertigo followed the downward spiral of the obsessed, Fire Walk with Me showed the other side, the psychological effects on the object of obsession. The films go hand in hand, filling in both sides of the story in an incredibly similar way. Laura, played outstandingly by Cheryl Lee, is on the surface very much like Madeline. Unstable, manipulative. Oh, and don't forget...
What color hair will she have? Blonde.
But there's a second Laura. One who, like Judy, is in way over her head.
He comes in through my window at night.
However, while we only get a glimpse of what Judy goes through, we see Laura's breakdown through the same subjective lens as Scotty's. Laura's nightmares start to consume her reality, like in this frightening sequence where she sees herself in a picture on the wall. There is ambiguity as to whether this is a supernatural occurrence or the product of Laura's stressed out mind. By constantly keeping us guessing at what's real, Lynch puts us in Laura Palmer's head, and we share her confused perspective. The subjective look Lynch gives us at Laura's last few days really gets at
the idea that there's a nether world under each skull, of strange and mysterious things.
This is why the film Fire Walk with Me adds an essential detail to the story created by the show. It takes us into the netherworld of Laura Palmer's skull, something we don't get to experience in the series, which takes place after her death. We experience the world as Laura does, a world that only seems whimsical and innocent on the surface. The charming small town of Twin Peaks is as unconventional a setting for a horror film as sunny San Francisco, where Vertigo takes place.
I grew up in small towns, and I must have sort of liked that. To me, maybe being sort of, paranoid, I'm always figuring there's, vast amounts of things that are kept secret from me.
Twin Peaks itself represents a facade, an idealistic, artificial cover for its dark underbelly. Like Laura's life, Twin Peaks has a few nasty details that can only be seen when one gets too close. This is especially expressed in the one detail that Laura herself is driven crazy by. The man she calls Bob, who haunts her nightmares, is actually her father and loving family man, Leland Palmer. Leland's incestuous obsession with his daughter is veiled because Laura sees Bob as an entirely separate person from Leland. We assume Bob only exists supernaturally, or is another one of Laura's nightmares. Lynch keeps the audience as in the dark and as conflicted about Leland as Laura is. And in the final scene where Laura is murdered by Leland, this happens. A mirror, the same motif Hitchcock uses in Vertigo to portray a double identity. The same ideas appear in Lynch's Fire Walk with Me and Hitchcock's Vertigo, each done uncannily similarly, yet each taking an entirely different side, but concluding with the same fatal outcome. Perhaps after the increasing critical reconsideration Fire Walk with Me is starting to get, it will finally receive the same appreciation as Vertigo. Or perhaps that would be too coincidental.
Coincidences make us all think about life and maybe about some sort of strange plan to life.